So in this video, I'm going to share with you guys some of my thinking and also a framework that has been tremendously helpful for me to continually grow in deeper intimacy with God, not just once, but time and time again, to move from strength to strength, faith to faith, and glory to glory in every season, no matter what life throws at you, to help you to continually grow and flourish with your good Father. And so maybe you're here because you want that. You want to grow deeper in intimacy with Him. Maybe you're at a place with your faith where you just know there's got to be more than my current reality. I'm dissatisfied with my current experience of Christianity. Or you might be at a place where you feel like you're just hitting this brick wall, where you feel stuck and you know, I've got to get out of this rut. There's got to be more than what I currently know and experience with Him. And so if that's you, this video is going to be very helpful for you. Now, there are so many layers and so many angles and so many things that I could go to. Like, I'm speaking to a very broad conversation here. But to help me kind of give at least somewhere to start and some really good foundational pillars, I thought I'd share with you one of the frameworks that I use for myself, but I'll also help many clients to move through. And this framework has been tremendously helpful because irrespective of where you're coming from, and it'll make sense as I draw this up, no matter where you plug in from, we can get you into the place of flourishing and growing with your good Father, not just once, but in every season. So to help me explain this, I'm going to bring up my whiteboard here. And so one of the frameworks I use is what I call, well, actually I'll draw it first and then I'll explain it to you. So you guys know what this looks like. Looks like a cross. And so there are 4 pillars that you and I need in place in order to continuously flourish with God. If any one of these pillars are missing, then the cycle stops, or there is a cap and there's a limit, and we won't get to fully step into everything that He's actually inviting us into. And so the first pillar that I like to share and I like to talk about is simplicity. So I am convinced that much of the Western church is still stuck in the Galatian era, basically where we have made things way more complicated and so much more complex than they need to be. And because of that, that has only led to frustration, to confusion, to inner conflict, to feeling unworthy, to feel like we're not living up to God's standards, that we're off track. And it can cause us to even feel like we're bad, wrong Christians altogether because we're not walking out this path that we apparently have to walk out with Him. And that's what complication will do. And yet the gospel is so simple. In fact, Paul says to the Corinthians, I'm concerned for you that somehow like Eve was deceived by Satan, so also you have been deceived in your minds from the simplicity that is in Christ. And so the gospel is simple. And Jesus said it's so simple that even a child can understand it. In fact, He went a step further and said, unless you become like a child, you'll not inherit the kingdom. So the gospel is incredibly simple, and that's got to be one of the main pillars, one of the 4 pillars that I'm going to speak about here that has to be in place in order for you and I to continually flourish and grow with our good Father. So that's the first one, simplicity. The gospel is simple, and that's got to be there. The second pillar to continuously flourishing with God is intimacy. So you and I know that intimacy, it's not just about knowing Jesus, it's actually knowing Him. Not just knowing about God, but actually knowing Him. And Jesus warned the Pharisees about this. He says, you search the scriptures day and night because you think in them you have eternal life, yet you fail to realize that they point to me, and yet you refuse to come to me. And so people who knew the scriptures more than anybody completely missed the Son of Man when He stood in their midst. So it's not enough just to know about Jesus. It's not enough just to know the scriptures. It's not enough just to sing the songs. It's not enough just to get on a microphone or a video like this and preach a good message. No, it's actually about knowing Him, genuinely, intimately knowing Him. One of the most foundational scriptures in my life is Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 23. And he says, let not the wise man boast in his wisdom, nor the strong man in his strength, nor the rich man in his riches. But if any man wants to boast, let him boast in this one thing, know me. So it's all about knowing Him, not just knowing about Him, knowing Him. And you and I know that pregnancy doesn't happen just by holding hands. There's got to be intimacy. In John 15, Jesus talks about abiding in the vine. Abide in me and you will produce. You will reproduce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. So that's a second pillar that has helped me to continuously grow, and it will help you to continuously grow, is intimacy with your good Father, really deeply, truly knowing Him, not just knowing about Him. The third pillar to continuously flourishing with God is intentionality. In the West, we have forgotten the power of intentionality. And instead, we've given into things like apathy and que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. God will do whatever He wants to do. And we just sit there with our hands clasped together, and we've forgotten the power of intentionality. But here's the thing. Nothing happens without intentionality. Growth does not happen by accident. Instead, we know that in order to experience growth, in fact, few things in life, especially the important things, happen by accident. Instead, they require deliberateness, prioritization, and intentionality. And so all things begin with intentionality. Nothing happens without intentionality. God said, let there be, let there be, let there be. Intentionality. Or Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God. Intentionality. Or I think of Proverbs where it says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of kings to search it out. Intentionality. So nothing happens without intentionality. And unless we are being intentional in our journey, in our relationship, in all things, whatever it might be, we will not experience the fullness of what he's calling and inviting us into. So that's the third pillar, intentionality. You've got to have intentionality, this willingness to put actions to your faith and to walk it out. So that's the third one. The fourth and final pillar, courage. Everything that you want in life is on the other side of fear. And the way to get past fear is courage. Joshua and Caleb, in order to inherit the promised land, God says to them, be strong and courageous. You have to have courage. And we know that in order to, if you want to walk on water, you have to be willing to step out the boat. And so the reason for this is because during our journey, things are going to come up. We're going to be faced with some things, whether it's external obstacles or challenges, or whether it's what we call the junk in our trunk. And so irrespective of what that is, you are going to have to need the courage to be able to face that and to overcome that. In order for Joshua and Caleb, the Israelites, to dwell in the promised land, they had to overcome the giants that were there first. And what was really cool is that within the promised land, the houses were already built, the crops were already there. Everything that God desired for them was there for them to simply enter into and dwell. But they had to overcome the giants first. And so it takes courage. Now, these are all much larger conversations that we could go into another time. But I'm going to speak to these very briefly, and then hopefully this is going to help you to see where you can next move or your next step in order to grow with Him. So again, we have simplicity, we have intimacy, we have intentionality, and we have courage. Now, under all of these, there are subcategories, if I can use that language. And so under simplicity, I would wrap all of that just in the basics of knowing that you are loved. So the simple gospel is that you are loved, you have always been loved, and you will always be loved. And you will be pursued by Him all the days of your life, that He would leave the 99 just to seek the one. He would leave the crowd just to pursue you. And His love for you is not based on anything that you could do, should do, would do, or won't do. It's not even based on your behavior, whether good or bad. It's the nature of who He is. And so the simplicity of the gospel is that you are loved, and that's it. And there's nothing you can add to it. There's nothing you can take away from it. You either believe it and receive it, or you deny it and reject it. And you can even deny and reject it through your own works. And so many times we fall into this. And part of the complexity of religion and of performance Christianity is that it causes us to think that we have to do certain things, or it causes us to believe that we have to do certain things in order to grow in some sort of status to be able to receive His love. And it's just not true. And so that's an example of what I would label or sub-label simplicity is around. It's the love of God. It's the simplicity of being His beloved, of being His child, that it's about His finished work, not your attempts at good works. It's simply all about Jesus, and that's the simplicity of it. Intimacy I already talked about. I think that's really simple. And so I guess to help see this or paint this picture, I'll give you 3 examples. So one of the examples that come from our own life, my wife and I, is that we are in a place where we have learned and we've grown into this place where we can live from God's provision. Now, this started with us losing all our provision. So a number of years ago, things happen, all our ways and attempts to generate income, to generate provision for our family now, it all got just squashed, for lack of a better word. And that's another story for another time. And in that moment, I was forced to realize everything that I thought and believed and was trying to do obviously is not working. There's something off here. There's something I'm not seeing. There's something that needs to change. And what needed to change was not the externals. No, something needed to change in me. And so one of the first things that took place in this moment was that I realized the simplicity of the gospel. And it came from Matthew 6, where Jesus says, look at the birds of the trees. They neither sow nor reap nor store up in their barns, and yet your good Father takes care of them. Now, when you think of all financial advice today, we often we talk about those 3 things: sowing, reaping, and saving, storing up. And yet Jesus says the birds do none of those, and yet He still takes care of them. So how much more you and I? So understanding that simplicity helped me to go, oh, is this a real thing? Like, this is something that Jesus actually meant? Or is it just a good idea? Because at the moment, I didn't believe it. But I got a revelation of the simplicity of the gospel in this moment that took away the complexity of, like, Lee has to do all this. And so this understanding of the simplicity then led me into intimacy with Him, where now I was with Jesus saying, Jesus, I feel like this is true. And I feel like what you're saying in your word is real. Can you teach me to get good? Can you teach me to know and to let you care for me the way that you do for the birds. And so it brought me to a place of understanding him in a way that I didn't know this far. From there, we had to take intentional action. And so what that looked like for us is that we drew a line in the sand and we said, God, we give you full permission to be our provision. And from that place, we then had to walk it out, because it's one thing to say it, but then you've got to walk it out. And so we began to walk that out. And so what this ended up bringing up was it exposed areas in Lee's heart where he actually did not believe that God was good enough to take care of him, or he did not believe that Lee was good enough to allow God or to let God or to earn God's love and care for him. It also exposed areas of control in my heart where I felt like I had to be in control of provision and where that came from. I had to dictate and know every part of that because that was my security. And so ultimately exposed that I didn't believe that God was as good as I could probably preach he was, as I could probably say he was. And so I had to face all of that. And that was super uncomfortable because it came up and I couldn't deny it. I couldn't run from it. And I had to face that. And it was incredibly uncomfortable. But I walked through it. I repented of it. I just surrendered to him, all of that. I had the willingness to face the junk in my trunk. And then that brought us to immense breakthrough, which led us back to the simplicity of the gospel. So one of the breakthroughs that happened for us here was that within 2 weeks of first drawing a line in the sand up in intentionality and then facing some of the junk, 2 weeks later, I had a complete stranger. Never met them, don't know who they are, still haven't met them or know them to this day. And they messaged me and said, hi, my name is, we've been praying for you and we feel like God has said to give you some money. So they gave us $2,000. Now that's never happened in my life. But that didn't happen also by accident. I'm convinced that happened because of what took place here going through these 4 pillars. So I call these 4 pillars the Flourish Flywheel. And so when you have simplicity, intimacy, and intentionality and courage in place, you now get thrusted into this Flourish Flywheel and you start growing and moving from strength to strength, faith to faith, glory to glory. So that moment for us, we had that breakthrough and somebody gave us $2,000. That then brought us back to the simplicity of, oh my goodness, like it's this simple? Like, is it really this simple? And then it took us back to the place of intimacy of, God, you were just too good. I didn't know you're this good. Oh, teach me to get good at being loved by you. And then as you understand him more in a new way, it then takes you on new journeys and experiences with him. And you've got to be willing to walk that out. And then as you walk that out, you're then faced with other stuff, other difficulty. And you've got to have the courage to walk that out. And as you walk it out, you go, oh, it's all good. Like he always is with us. He really does take care of us. He really does love us. And so it just takes you into this Flourish Flywheel. And so that's an example of many, but that's one example just of a practical, tangible example. Another example of one of my clients who is doing one-on-one coaching with me, and his desire was to grow in this area of healing the sick. So he came here with this intentional, deliberate pursuit of healing the sick. And so part of that meant that, okay, I've actually got to walk this out. So it means I've got to approach people. I've got to ask people, hey, can I pray for you? And then I've got to pray for them. And then what happens when you don't see it? How do you respond and all of that? So he had to face a whole lot of this stuff. But then as he walked it out as well, he was then met with simplicity and intimacy. And one of the things that took place for him is that he realized for a long time he was moving from this place of intentionality and healing the sick, but it was from a place of faith. So I've got to speak to this just very quickly. He was moving from a place of faith. And if we're not careful, faith can become a work. And there's nothing wrong with that. Faith works, but it also is a work. But what happened for this gentleman as he was taking up courage and then discovering more about the simplicity of the gospel, that he is loved, that people are loved, and then growing and knowing Jesus more, it changed to the point where now he is moving and praying for people, not from the place of faith, but now from the place of love. And Paul says that faith works through love, and that faith is the more excellent way, and that love never fails. And without love, it's nothing anyway. And so now he's seeing healing. He's seeing people having genuine healing experiences, and this is happening so much simpler and easier for him, and it's happening all from the place of love, which is a beautiful thing. So that's a second example. A third and final example that I share is of a young new mum that I just met her last week. And she was explaining to me that she was feeling off track in her faith. And the reason for that is because in last season, prior to her newborn baby, she was reading the Bible every single day for 1 hour. And it's amazing. And it was fruitful and it was really helpful for her. She enjoyed it. But now she has a brand new child and she's not able to read the Bible for 1 hour a day like she used to. And so because of that, she now feels off track in her faith. She feels like she's guilty, she's unworthy, and she feels like God has distanced himself and pulled back from her. And so I asked her this question. I said, who set up the track? You see, many times you and I will set up this track or this list of behaviors, standards that you and I think we have to meet in order to be someone or to have some sort of position in the Father. But the simplicity of the gospel is that it's never about your or my works. It's all about his perfect performance and his finished work. And so I had to remind her, number one, relax, it's all good. Also, number two, you're in a totally new season and you need to give yourself more grace. And you know what? Maybe you can't read the Bible for an hour a day like you did before. But now, as you're tending to your newborn baby and enjoying that, you must know that your good Father is right there with you in that, and He's delighting in this new journey with you. And so I told her, it's not about your performance. God can meet you in all of it. Look, you may only get 1 minute to read for the day or not. And even in that 1 minute, God will still meet you in that, because it's not about your performance. It's about His goodness and His goodness for you. And you get to rest, relax, enjoy, and flow in that goodness. And she broke down in tears. You could see the weight just physically fall off her. But the reason why she was feeling that way is because she hadn't understood the simplicity of the gospel. Instead, she had given into this complex idea that it's all about my works and my efforts and what I'm doing, and she had allowed religion, self-imposed religion, to then lead to condemnation, to depression, and to feeling separation from God, and yet none of that was true. And so by her coming back to the simplicity of the gospel, it then opened up to greater intimacy with her good Father, and she's now being okay with, all right, maybe I can't read as much as I used to, but as I'm tending to my baby, I'm going to intentionally be aware of your goodness. And now she's back in this flywheel of just growing from strength to strength, faith to faith, glory to glory. And so those are just some examples of the power, the effect, and the way that you can continue to flourish with God in every season, irrespective of what that looks like. And so I do want to say as well that all of this is just a tool. So the goal is Jesus. It's all about knowing Him. That is the simplicity of it. We're just growing and knowing Him. And this is just a tool that can help you to grow and to flourish in that. And it's something that has helped me tremendously. It is something that has helped so many of my clients in their journey. Many times when somebody starts coaching with me, I will help them to simplify their faith and just streamline their faith and help them to then enter into deeper intimacy with Him. And many times that's a natural byproduct, because they realize, man, I had so much complexity here, but through understanding the simplicity of the gospel, it's brought me to a new understanding of who He is and His goodness and His love. And so now they get to enjoy Him in a way that they didn't before. And from that, they grow in knowing Him more. This takes them to new experiences with Him. So now they have to intentionally walk that out with Him, because He's inviting them into it. And as they walk it out, things will come up, things will happen, clearing the way, junk in the trunk. You've got to have the courage to face that. And as you do, it comes back to simplicity and you're in the flywheel. And it just happens. And so what's really great about this flywheel as well is that it does not matter where you plug in from. So from my story, an example was the simplicity of God being able to provide for us. That was where we plugged in from. For my client who's growing in healing, they plugged in from intentionality, and yet they were still able to go through the circle. It may have started here instead of here, but this is where he saw breakthrough, and now he's in the Flourish Flywheel. So it doesn't matter where you come in from. You will always be able to flow and move from strength to strength, faith to faith, glory to glory. And I will also say that you don't have to go in this order. So you might jump in here like, I just want to grow in deeper intimacy with God. All right, that's going to mean some things, is that reprioritizing, is it setting some time aside? And then you might come back to intimacy and look, I just need to be with Him. Or you may need a revelation of the simplicity of the gospel and you're bouncing back in here for a little while. It does not matter where you go. Once you're plugged in, and that flywheel is happening for you. And again, you're growing from strength to strength, faith to faith, glory to glory. The last thing that I'll finish on here, and that's also very helpful, is that from seeing this flywheel, you can often now see where your blockage might be. So maybe you are amazing at setting aside time. You're very intentional to grow with Him. And then there are things that are coming up. You're facing it. You're like, yeah, I'm dealing to that. But then there's a block here. And the block here is maybe that you have a complicated religious belief or gospel that is actually robbing you from the simplicity. So what you need is the simplicity of the gospel, and that's going to cause you to have that breakthrough to then continue on this journey. Or maybe you are at a place where you're having these amazing times of intimacy and just really knowing Him, and you're having these awesome adventures and experiences with Him, but there's a blockage here. Well, maybe your next step is you need a bit of courage. Maybe the thing that you are needing to move into requires you a bit of courage first so that you can step into that. So that's a great thing about this framework as well. It can often help you to see what your next step is. So I think I will leave it there. But when these 4 pillars are at play, the Flourish Flywheel, you will continually grow from strength to strength, faith to faith, glory to glory, simplicity, intimacy, intentionality, and courage. And like I said, these are just, I guess, there are sub layers to all these things as well. So in a lot of the coaching that I do with my clients, we deal to all the stuff under that as well. Like I said, these are much bigger conversations, but the simplicity of this and the most core and pillar foundations are these four. And when you have those four in place, then you'll continue to grow no matter the season. And it becomes fun, it becomes a joy, and it really is living in the light and easy yoke and burden that He has invited us into. It's His idea. So, some things to think about. Where can you see yourself in this flywheel at the moment? Maybe you're at the place of enjoying intimacy and intentionality, and there's a block here. But maybe for you realize, oh, okay, I actually need to take courage. I know that He's been calling me to something, but I haven't stepped into that. Maybe it's time for you to take up courage. Or maybe you're at a block here where you're doing everything else, but it's like something's off, something's missing. Well, maybe you have a limiting religious belief. Maybe it's the time to come back to the simplicity of the gospel, that you are fully loved, unconditionally, separate from your behavior, and that it's not about what you can do, it's about what He has done, and you get to rest in that. And I do find that majority of people that I work with, the majority of Christians, the two biggest issues they struggle with is simplicity and courage. That's where I find majority of the blockages. Either they are not taking up courageous action, or they haven't understood the simplicity of the gospel. They're still stuck in religious, limiting performance Christianity. And so hopefully this helps for you. Again, my desire, my heart is that we would all flourish, flow, and grow through this. But with these four pillars in this framework, these will help you to grow from strength to strength, faith to faith, and glory to glory. So bless you.